Hello everyone, hope all of you are safe and healthy. Welcome to IS Baba's Rapid Revision Series for Prelims 2021. This is session 32 and day 44. And the topics we have are Indian polity, central government and the central government schemes. So these are the hot topics we are going to discuss. They are parliamentary privileges, then cabinet committees, then Attorney General of India, then the ordinances and the Ordinance Raj, then CBI, then the Interstate Council and the Zonal Council, then Mission Karma Yogi, then Nipun Bharat Abhiyan, then Mother and Child Protection Card Scheme, and then lastly the parliamentary committees. Friends, we will discuss more parliamentary committees in the subsequent classes, and this is the part 1. And before we start, friends, in polity, the cross check is a sine qua non. So, as more the cross check you make, the lesser will be the chances of you committing silly mistakes, and more will be your correct answers, and more will be the marks. So, how to do the cross check? For example, the subsequent elections of president should be held within 6 months of the finishing of the term of the previous president. So, this is provided in the constitution. But this 6 months is not provided for vice president. So, such cross checks you will have to make more and more in order to improve the precision of your knowledge. So, here in this class we make some of those cross checks. We will begin. The first one, parliamentary privileges. So, why was it in news, friends? Because the Supreme Court recently gave relief to Arnab Goswami in breach of privilege case for making derogatory remarks against CM of Maharashtra. So, in this case, it was in news. So, now coming to parliamentary privileges, there are two kinds of privileges. They are individual and collective privileges. So, coming to individual privileges, Article 105 Clause 1 provides the freedom of speech for the members within the Houses of Parliament. So, nothing spoken in the House can be called into questions by the court of law. However, this freedom is restricted by the rules of procedure. So, it is not an unrestricted power. So, the cross check we can make here, and then members are exempted from jury service. So, if the members of the House, if they have any court cases that are going on, they can refuse to attend the court cases, and they can even refuse to attend as a witness in any other cases as well. And then members can't be arrested during the session, and also 40 days before the beginning and 40 days after the ending of the session. So, session should be given the utmost importance, and during the session no arrest can be taken up. And this 40 days prior and 40 days after is given because in earlier days it was very dilatory to go from the home constituency to the Delhi to attend the session and come back. So, that is why this 40 days is also given, because when a person or a member of the House is getting ready to go to Delhi for the session, or when a person is traveling back, even in that interregnum period, arrests cannot be taken up. So, we understand the logic and we do not by heart. Then, coming to next, more facts regarding parliamentary privileges. So, Supreme Court said that if there was any conflict between the existing privileges of the parliament and the fundamental rights of a citizen, then the former shall prevail. So, here the privileges of the parliament will prevail, not the fundamental rights. And then, Article 105 Clause 3 and Article 194 Clause 3 are not to be construed as subject to Part 3 of the Constitution, that is guaranteeing the fundamental rights. So, here as fundamental rights will not prevail, so these cannot be acting as a defense. Or in other words, consider an example. If the House of a legislature, it prohibits a portion of its debate from publication. So, this is a parliamentary privilege, you agree with me? And if anybody publishes it by overcrossing the privilege, then he will be amenable to punishment. At this point of time, his fundamental right to freedom of expression will not come as a defense. So, that is why the parliamentary privilege will prevail, not the fundamental right. But however, the Supreme Court has held that though the existing privileges would not be fettered by the Article 19 Clause 1 subclause A, but they must be read subject to Articles 20 to 21 and 32. That is, if a person is amenable to be punished under parliamentary privilege, then his fundamental right to arrest and detention, his fundamental rights for bail, or his fundamental right to constitutional remedy, that is to approach the Supreme Court directly, will not be violated. So, in that context, these 3 to 4 fundamental rights will prevail over parliamentary privileges. Then, come to next, the collective privileges of the parliament. So, right of the parliament to publish or deny to publish the reports, debates and proceedings of the parliament. Yes, they have this right. And then Article 361A, it provides for protection for publishing the true reports. So if you publish the true reports honestly, then you may not be charged under the parliamentary privilege breach. Then right to exclude strangers. So if there are strangers, parliament can exclude them from attending the session. Then right to suspend or expel members in case of breach of privileges. So if anybody breaches the privilege within the house, they can expel or suspend the members. Then right to call for a secret sitting. Yes, secret sitting means, friends, not giving any intimation to the media or not allowing any outsiders to see or view the proceedings. Then right to frame the rules for conduct of their business. So they have the right to form their own rules to conduct the business. So this is provided in Article 105 and Article 194. 105 for the parliament and 194 for the state legislatures. So friends, wherever I have written the article here, it means that these rights or these privileges are being given in the constitution itself. So wherever the articles are not written, it is akin that they are not provided in the constitution, rather they are provided in the rules of procedures of the houses of parliament. So that cross check we will make here itself. Then coming to next, can punish the breach of privilege via reprimand, admonition and imprisonment. And then right to conduct enquiries and call upon witnesses. So parliament also has this adjudicatory role wherein it can conduct enquiries in case of any breach of privilege, and it can also call for witnesses. Then proceedings of the house are out of judicial review. The proceedings of the house cannot be called into question by the courts of law. So this is provided in Article 122, a constitutional clause. Then no person can be arrested and no legal process can be served within the precincts of the house without the permission of the presiding officer. So no arrests or no legal notices can be served within the premises of the house. Then right to receive immediate information of arrest, detention, conviction, imprisonment and release of a member. So they have the right to immediate information. So friends, here 1, 2 and Article 361A, these are provided in the Constitution and others are provided in the rules of procedure of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Then coming to next one, the cabinet committees. Friends, cabinet committees will be often in news because Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, it comes up with reports. Then Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs, they come up with new schemes, etc. So now the key points are, they are extra constitutional bodies in emergence. So these are not provided in the Constitution. Then there are two types of cabinet committees. They are standing committees and ad hoc committees. So standing committees are permanent, ad hoc committees are set up on a temporary basis. So once the project for which they are being set up is finished, they will resign or they will be abolished. Then composition of cabinet committees. They are usually including the cabinet ministers. But however, non-cabinet ministers can also be included as members. And then apart from the ministers in charge of the subjects covered, other senior ministers can also be included. For example, for the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, even the Defense Minister can be included. Then such committees are usually chaired by Prime Minister. So almost all the cabinet committees are chaired by Prime Minister. But however, Cabinet Committee on Accommodation is headed by Home Minister. And then Cabinet Committee on Parliamentary Affairs, it is headed by Defense Minister currently. So these two cross checks we will make here itself. Then coming to next, some of the cabinet committees. So we have these many cabinet committees currently, that is appointment committees of the cabinet, then Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, then Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs, and then Cabinet Committee on Investment and Growth. This was added by Narendra Modi government. And then Cabinet Committee on Security, then Cabinet Committee on Parliamentary Affairs, and then Cabinet Committee on Employment and Skill Development, one more added by Narendra Modi government, and then Cabinet Committee on Accommodation. So appointment committees, it appoints senior IAS officers, secretaries, joint secretaries, etc. And then Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, that looks into the economic issues. And then the Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs. So any major decision taken in the government of India, that will be done in the Cabinet Committee on Political Affairs. And then Cabinet Committee on Security will be purely on defense and other related issues. And then the Cabinet Committee on Parliamentary Affairs. So if there are any laws that are to be introduced into the parliament, so that will be taken care by Parliamentary Affairs Committee. Then Cabinet Committee on Accommodation. So the accommodation related issues for the MPs, ministers and others, that will be taken care by this committee. Then come to next, Attorney General of India. Friends, why was it in news? Because KK Venugopal, the Attorney General of India, he was reappointed as the Attorney General for one more year. Now, Article 76 of the Constitution of India provides for office of the Attorney General of India. So, it says that the Government of India includes President, Council of Minister and the Attorney General. So, Attorney General is included in the executive of the government. So, that cross check we make here. Then move on. Appointment. So, the Attorney General is appointed by the President by the warrant under his hand and seal. And then qualification. He should be a citizen of India and should be qualified to be appointed as a judge of a Supreme Court. Friends, the logic is that Attorney General is a legal officer and he is the highest legal officer in the Government of India. So, but obvious, he has to get that qualification at least to become a Supreme Court judge in order to attain that office. Then term. He works during the pleasure of President, that is, no fixed term. Until the President has the pleasure, he will be in the office. Then removal. Removed by the President of India and the procedure and grounds not present in the Constitution. So, Constitution will not provide any of the grounds here, but however, it might be present in the Attorney General's Terms and Conditions of Services Act, the law passed by the Parliament. Then resignation. He submits the resignation to the President of India. Then salary. It is equal to that of Supreme Court judge. So, once again, as the legal officers, the salary of Supreme Court judges and Attorney General would be same. Then come to next, more facts, that is the functions of Attorney General. He is the law officer of the country. Yes, we know that. Then the Attorney General of India has the right to speak and take part in the proceedings of both the House of the Parliament and even in the joint session without a right to vote. So, he is not elected and is neither a nominated candidate. He can take part, but he cannot vote. Then he gives advice to the government upon such legal matters which are referred to by the President. Yes, he is a legal advisor. Then he appears on behalf of the Government of India in all cases in the Supreme Court in which the Government of India is concerned. So, wherever Government of India is accused in the court of law, he will plead in favor of government. Then he represents the Government of India in any reference made by the President to the Supreme Court under Article 143. So, if any suggestion is required by the Supreme Court, President can ask for such suggestions under Article 143. So, in such cases, Attorney General will plead in favor of government. Then he appears in any High Court in any case in which Government of India is concerned. So, not only in the Supreme Court, any courts, if he is called for in favor of government, he has to attend. Then he has the right to plead in any court in the territory of India. So, in other words, we can say that Attorney General, while staying in office, he can also plead the private cases. So, once he is an Attorney General, it doesn't mean he is a complete government official. So, he can practice the law privately as well. Then come to next, the ordinances. Friends, why was it in use? Because the famous farm bills were first passed as ordinances and then they were passed in the houses. So, coming to ordinance, President can promulgate the ordinance only when both the houses or either of the house is not in session. Then, in other circumstances where the President thinks it is necessary to act without waiting for the houses to assemble. For example, the Nirbhaya Act was promulgated via ordinance because the strikes were going on and there was no time to wait for the houses to assemble. So, in such emergency cases, President can promulgate ordinance. Then, an ordinance rolled out when both the houses are in session is void in nature. Then, acts done and completed under the ordinance before it lapses remain intact. So, for example, the contract forming taken up before these ordinances would have lapsed, then those contracts would remain intact. Then, President's power to roll out the ordinance is justifiable on the grounds of mala fide intentions. So, if a President is promulgating ordinance purely on the basis of bad intentions, then judiciary can intervene and it can strike down those ordinances. Then, an ordinance can be retrospective in nature. So, it need not be prospective alone. Even retrospective ordinances can be taken up. Then, Parliament has to approve the ordinance within 6 weeks from its reassembly. So, once the House reassembles, so within 6 weeks it has to approve the ordinance, else the ordinance will lapse. Then, ordinance cannot take away any rights of the citizens that are guaranteed by the fundamental rights of the Indian Constitution. So, just like how any law cannot violate a fundamental right, the same way ordinance cannot violate these fundamental rights as well. Then, ordinance also stands void if both the houses pass a resolution disapproving the ordinance. So, but obvious, if the houses disapprove, the ordinance will fail. Then, coming to next, ordinance making power of the governor. So, here we do the cross check. Friends, almost all the powers are same. But however, in the instant wherein the bill has to be reserved for the president, in those bills or the ordinance counterparts of those bills will be having some changes. We will see the president's instructions to the governor on the following three cases are must. That is, if a bill containing the same provisions would have been required the previous sanction of president for its introduction into the state legislature. So, if the bill requires the president's consent, then the counterpart of it, the ordinance also requires president's consent. Then, if the governor would have deemed it necessary to reserve a bill containing the same provisions for the consideration of president. So, if a bill was passed and if the governor deemed it fit to be considered for the reservation to the president, the counterpart of it, the ordinance, shall require the president's assent. And then if an act of state legislature containing the same provisions would have been invalid without receiving the president's assent. So, if a law is invalid without president's assent, that counterpart, the ordinance, will also be invalid without president's assent. So, in all these, president's instructions or order or consent shall be necessary. Then, coming to next, the CBI. Friends, why CBI is in news? Because many posts inside the CBI are being vacant and government is not taking steps to appoint them speedily. Now, coming to CBI. The CBI was established as the Delhi Special Police Establishment and under the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act in 1941, that is during the Second World War. So, there was some scandal regarding the procurement of arms during the Second World War. So, that is the reason why CBI was established. And then, Shantanam Committee for Prevention of Corruption, it recommended a full-fledged CBI to be adopted and established. Hence, it was set up by an order of Home Ministry after the recommendation by Shantanam Committee. And then, now currently, it works as an attached office under the Ministry of Personnel. Yes, once again, we will cross-check, friends, not the Home Ministry. It works under Ministry of Personnel. Then, coming to next, Director of CBI. Friends, Director of CBI is an Inspector General of Police rank officer, an IGP rank officer, and that is provided under the Delhi Special Police Establishment Act. So, it is not a DGP rank officer and it is provided in DSPE Act. Then, the newly enacted Lokpal, it stated that the Director of CBI shall be appointed by the committee that is consisted by the following members. So, who are the committee members? They are the Prime Minister, who is the chairman, then Leader of Opposition or the Leader of single largest opposition party, and then the Chief Justice of India or any Supreme Court judge. So, a committee formed by these members, they will appoint the Director of CBI. Then, Director of CBI has been provided security of tenure of 2 years, and this is provided by the CVC Act or the Central Vigilance Commission Act 2003. So, friends, the director position is being provided by the DSPE Act. Then the appointment is provided by the Lokpal Act and the tenure is provided by the CVC Act. So, this is how CBI is a mixture of 3 to 4 laws. Then, come to next, the cases handled by CBI. So, special crimes, any crimes that are being assigned to the CBI, it will be taken up. Then, economic crimes. Friends, CBI also has the economic wing. So, any fraudulence regarding the financial issues will be taken up. Then, anti-corruption cases, those recommended by the CVC or the newly appointed Lokpal will be taken up by the CBI. Then, suo motu cases, any cases which are being taken up on the suo motu basis by the CBI. Then, issue of consent. So, friends, recently, states like Andhra Pradesh and West Bengal, they withdrew the consent for CBI to investigate within their states. So, in this context, it will be in news. So, friends, as per the Section 6 of Delhi Special Police Establishment Act 1946, the state governments can withdraw the general consent accorded. So, they can withdraw the consent. Hence, there are two kinds of consents. They are specific consent and general consents. Now, coming to case specific consent. So, here a case involving state government employees or a violent crime has been occurred in a given state. So, in this context, the very state is the subject of investigation. So, this is a case specific consent, and here only after the particular state gives the consent, the CBI can investigate. Friends, this will not be a big issue because when the state is assigning the case for CBI, automatically it is akin that it is giving the consent. But however, the general consent, That is, to aid the CBI to easily perform its investigation into cases of corruption against central government employees and in the concerned state. So, if a central government employee he commits the act of corruption in a state and now the CBI has to investigate there. So, this is not a case to case basis, but in general states should allow CBI to investigate. But however, recently Andhra Pradesh and West Bengal they withdrew this general consent. But however, it is good that almost all states have given the general consent. So, this is all about the consent. But however, friends, when the states withdraw their consent, so that is not applicable for an ongoing investigation in a case. So, those investigations that are already going on, they can be done without interruption, and this ban on the consent will not apply for those ongoing cases. Then, coming to next, the Interstate Council. Interstate Council, friends, why was it in news? Because the 15th Finance Commission, it recommended that more and more discussions has to be taken up in the Interstate Council so that the disputes between center and the states will be resolved. So, in this context, Interstate Council will become important. Coming to the key facts, it was set up under Article 263 in 1990 for the first time, and it was set up through an ordinance. So, Interstate Council is a constitutional body, we all know that. Then, the first Interstate Council was set up as per the recommendation of Sarkaria Commission. So, this one fact we will remember. Then, it will be obviously set up under the Ministry of Home Affairs. And then, the Interstate Council is proposed to meet thrice a year. But however, this meeting has not taken place, and the latest meeting was held after a gap of 10 years in Delhi in July 2016. So, this 10 years is a huge gap when we compare to this above clause, wherein an Interstate Council has to meet thrice a year. Then, come to next, composition. So, the Interstate Council should be composed of Prime Minister acting as the chairman of the council, then Union Ministers of Cabinet rank in the central government, then Council of Ministers nominated by the Prime Minister, then Chief Ministers of all the states or Chief Ministers of Union Territories having a legislative assembly, that is the Chief Ministers of Delhi and Puducherry, then Administrators of Union Territories not having a legislative assembly. So, those Lieutenant Governors and Administrators. Then, Governors of those states being administered by the President's rule. So, wherein the Legislative Assembly is either suspended or being dissolved. So, in those contexts, the Governor will attend the Interstate Council. Then, more facts about Interstate Council. Friends, as Interstate Council, it cannot take up regional issues, zonal councils were set up. So, where are the zonal councils provided? Zonal councils were set up via the Part 3 of the States Reorganization Act 1956. So, while Interstate Council is a constitutional body, zonal councils can be set as a statutory bodies. Then, it provided for the North, South, East, West and Central zonal councils. However, Northeast Council is not provided under the State Reorganization Act. The Northeast Council was created by a special Northeast Councils Act 1971. And then, one more fact is that Andaman and Nicobar Islands and also the Lakshadweep Islands are not members of any of the zonal councils. But however, they are presently having special invitee status to the Southern Zonal Council. So, these are some of the facts which we need to remember. We move on. Come to next, the Mission Karma Yogi. Friends, before going to the facts, we will discuss what is the Mission Karma Yogi. Friends, here we will be having a platform. Just like we have RRS website, there will be a portal there, and there the lectures regarding your interpersonal skills, how to improve them, how to improve your leadership skills, how to improve your empathy, sympathy, and how not to get nervous during pressure times. So, all those lectures and all those training materials will be provided in the portal. And you will have a yearly subscription. So, you will pay money and you will have a financial subscription of this portal. And you can use these lectures and you can train yourself. So, this is on demand basis. That is, whichever training you need, only those you can take up. Or there is combo as well. So, that is once you pay the entry fees, you can take or you can avail any services for that matter. And once you avail these courses, at the end of the course, there will be a test and you will be given a progress report card. And on the basis of those progress report cards, your track record will be maintained and upgraded. So, this is a portal for training the personnel. And the technical issues of this portal will be maintained by a special purpose vehicle. And the management, that is what course should be inculcated, what courses should be deleted, will be taken up by a coordination unit. that is the IAS officers or the senior IAS officers will take care of those. And what new developments has to be taken up, that will be taken up by experts team. And overall the monitoring will be under the approval of a human resource council headed by Prime Minister. So this is all about Mission Karma Yogi. So now we will discuss in detail what is Mission Karma Yogi and the related facts. So first one, institutional framework for Mission Karma Yogi. Friends, Prime Minister's Public Human Resource Council will be the head of this Mission Karma Yogi. Yes, we have discussed that any new development or any new initiative will be approved by this Human Resource Council. Then Capacity Development Commission or the Capacity Building Commission. So this is an expert body and this will study what new things has to be brought in. And they will get the approval of PM HR Council and they will update the website. Then Special Purpose Vehicle for owning and operating the digital assets and technology platform for online training. So the technical issues will be taken up by this Special Purpose Vehicle. Then the Coordination Unit headed by Cabinet Secretary. So in other words, these IAS officers, they will manage the portal. Then iGOT scheme. So what is iGOT? iGOT is the name of that portal. And this is under the Ministry of Human Resource Development, not under the Ministry of Personnel, but Ministry of Human Resource Development. A cross check we will make here itself. Then digital e-learning courses of world-class content. So we know that iGOT platform will be having various courses and lectures. Then other services like certification after probation period. So once you finish the course or once you finish the probation, certificate will be provided. Then postings, work assignments and vacancies would also be integrated on the platform. So along with these training issues or training courses, even the postings wherever it is vacant and who are being appointed, all those things will be updated in the portal. Then come to next, the important facts. Capacity building at individual, institutional and process level will be taken up. So as an individual, on the basis of demand, you can avail the services or even an institution can avail the service. So for example, the CBI itself can subscribe to this Mission Karma Yogi iGOT platform and it can train its personnel. And then process level. So not only on a content basis, on a process basis, that is on a continuous yearly or 10-yearly basis, we can subscribe to this platform and we can continuously train our personnel. And then it will cover around 46 lakh central employees between 2020 and 2025. So this is the time period, we will remember that. Then a special purpose vehicle, a not-for-profit company, is set up under the Companies Act. So that SPV, which maintains the technical issues of the iGOT portal, will be set up under the Companies Act. Then this will manage the iGOT Karma Yogi platform. Now coming to the apex body of Prime Minister's Human Resource Council. So that will be composed of Prime Minister as a chairman, then union ministers, then chief ministers of all the states, then eminent public HR practitioners, so HR experts or the human resource experts, then thinkers, then global thought leaders and public service functionaries, the senior IAS officers or the retired IAS officers. So it contains both generalists, specialists, politics or other leaders. Then coming to next, salient features of this Mission Karma Yogi. It is rule based to role based. So what is rules based to roles based function? It is to allocate jobs based on their competencies. So we know that certification is given and your track record is updated in the iGOT platform. So on the basis of your track record, your postings and promotion will take place, not on the basis of seniority from now on. And then on-site learning or on-the-job training. So rather than just lecture training and rather than mere classroom lectures, you will be having on-the-job training. So as an IAS probationer, you will be having more training by working as assistant commissioner, additional collector or maybe even tahsildar and other on-the-job trainings. Then an ecosystem of shared training infrastructure will be created. That is, the training module of one department will be shared with the others and it will be learned by sharing the study materials. Then behavioral, functional and domain competencies. So behavioral expertise, that is the communication skills, how to handle the pressure, how to treat your subordinates, how to speak with your superiors, all these things will be trained here. Then functional and domain competencies. So if you are heading a finance ministry or if you are becoming a finance secretary, you will be made an expert in finances and revenue issues. So likewise, the domain expertise will be trained here. Then to create a single ecosystem of learning through annual financial subscription for every employee. So this is like a combo. Once you subscribe, you can take any courses for that matter. Then partnership with learning content creators. So not just the IAS officers, the public training institutes or the administrative training institutes, then universities like IGNOU, JNU and some of the startups in this human resource department, they will take part in setting the content for this portal. So that is how content will be updated from all the sites. So this is all about Mission Karmayogi platform. Do not by heart the things, understand friends. Then coming to next, Nipun Bharat. So why was it in news? Because the Union Minister for Education or the HRD, he launched the National Initiative for Proficiency in Reading with Understanding and Numeracy. So the Nipun scheme means National Initiative for Proficiency in Reading with Understanding and Numeracy. So this is an abhiyan for numeracy and understanding skills. So what are the aims? It aims to ensure universal literacy and numeracy by the end of grade 3 by 2026-27. So by end of 2026-27, the class 3 students, they will be having universal literacy and numeracy. So those approximately 9 years of age children, they will be having universal access to numeracy and literacy. Then it works under the aegis of centrally sponsored scheme of Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. So recently, under the new education policy, which states that the early childhood care to graduation level, the education should be integrated. So under this Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, this Nipun scheme will be working. And then retaining children in the foundational year of schooling. So we know that friends, in the foundational year, if the students they drop out, then it is akin to the loss of education for that child. So the very aim of this Nipun is to retain those children and stopping the dropouts. And then teacher capacity building. So along with the students, we should also build the capacity of teachers to train those students. And diversified resources or learning materials. Not just the bookish notes, various materials like videos, then animations and other things will be supplied for these primary school students. And then tracking the progress of each child in achieving the learning outcomes. So not only you will be taught, you will be tracked as well. Then covers the age group of 3 to 9 years. So class 3 means approximately 7 or 8 years. Then in compliance with the national education policy, as this comes under Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, so automatically the national education policy 2020 will also be included. Then come to next, more facts about Nipun scheme, that is Lakshya Suchi or the targets for foundational literacy and numeracy FLN will be set up by the government. And these Lakshyas have been developed from the Balvatika to grade 3, that is concentrating on the early childhood care. So the targets will be set up. Then the Lakshyas are based on the learning outcomes developed by NCERT and International Research Foundation and ORF studies. So Organization for Research Foundations and other international organizations, they will be involving in setting up the targets. So now how the targets will be set friends? For example, a child should be able to read 45 to 60 words per minute if he is from grade 2, or he should read at least 60 words per minute correctly if he is in grade 3 or in class 3. And not only that, they should be able to read these 45 to 60 words from an unknown text with comprehension and also with utmost clarity. So they should not only read, they should understand with utmost clarity what they have read. So this is the target. An example for that, this is how Lakshya Suchis are being set up. Then under Nishta scheme, around 25 lakh teachers teaching at the pre-primary to primary grade will be trained. And this is for the training of foundational learning and numeracy. And Nishta is developed by the NCERT. So all these comes under Nipun Bharat. We will remember the facts and we will remember the aims and objectives of the scheme. Then come to next, Mother and Child Protection Card. Friends, why was it in news? Because the same Mother and Child Protection Card was recently launched by Ministry of Women and Child Development in partnership with Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. So these two ministries we will fact check here. Then come to next, more about MCP card. So it is a recording cum counseling card. So here your health will be recorded and you will be provided counseling facilities by the duty doctor in the primary health center. And then it can replace the immunization card developed jointly by the same Ministry of Women and Child Development and Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And this was supported by UNICEF and NIPSID. So friends, why this MCP card? It should replace this immunization card which was developed by UNICEF and the Government of India jointly, friends. because immunization card it provided only for the immunization against diseases. But this MCP card it not only provides immunization, it also provides for nutrition. That nutrition thing is an added thing here. So not only the communicable diseases, it is also those deficiency diseases, proteins, vitamins, minerals are all tracked under this single card. And originally this immunization card was used by ICDS scheme or the Integrated Child Development Scheme in some states, and now it is adopted by National Rural Health Mission and the RCH, the Reproductive and Community Health. So this MCP card which is going to replace the immunization card will be used by ICDS and NRHM officials. Then specific target groups, they are pregnant women, lactating women and families with children under 3 years of age, extending up to 16 years of immunization. So the family as a whole will be monitored because the mothers and their father's health will automatically transfer to the children health. And once they are taking birth, for the next 16 years, their health will be tracked and traced so that they will attain the adolescence or the puberty with utmost health and fitness. Then, use of the card. Where all this card is used? The village groups or the Mahila Mandal groups. Here, these cards are used to frame local policies for the health and nutrition of pregnant and children. Then, Ashas, auxiliary nurse midwives and auxiliary ward wives, they will be using these cards to educate the targeted groups. And then again the ICDS supervisors, the Integrated Child Development Scheme supervisors, they will be monitoring the children via this card. So for all these people and even for the family members, this card will be helpful. So we will take a look at this card. It contains something like gender, age, nutrition, minerals, etc. And it will be having the space to be filled by various officials. So this is how the card looks and this is what I got. You can get a better picture if you surf in the internet. Then come to next, the parliamentary committees. Friends, parliamentary committees like recently the Joint Parliamentary Committee for Rural Development, it has submitted its report. So in that context, various parliamentary committees will be important. So we will take up Public Accounts Committee for the first. So the year of establishment is in 1921, that is as per the Government of India Act 1919. And then the members are 22 members, that is 15 from Lok Sabha and 7 from Rajya Sabha. So this fact check we will make here itself. Then election of members. So they are elected by parliament every year with the proportional representation by means of single transferable vote. So just like how Rajya Sabha members are being elected, the same way the PAC members are being elected from Lok Sabha. Then a minister cannot be elected to PAC. So a minister is barred from getting into PAC. Then term of office 1 year because every year election are being held. Then chairman, speaker appoints him or her from amongst the members. So chairman is not elected amongst the members, he is just appointed. And invariably chairman is from the opposition party. So since 1967, a convention has grown and the PSC will be headed by a person from opposition party. And then coming to functions, to examine the annual audit reports of CAG, we know that, and then to inspect the appropriation accounts, then expenditures, then reappropriation accounts, that is the amount taken from one department to the other, and the propriety of the expenditure. So whether the expenditure has been spent legally, prudently or not. So all these things will be discussed in the Public Accounts Committee and the report will be placed in the Parliament. And the Parliament in turn will have to answer the report of Public Account Committee by the action taken report. So ATRs or the action taken reports are the must for answering the Public Account Committee. Then to examine accounts of public corporations and other autonomous bodies. So wherever the Committee on PSUs will not take up, so all those corporations and other government offices, those will be taken up by the Public Accounts Committee. Then to approve the excess grants. In the last class we have discussed that excess grants have to be placed in the Parliament only after the approval of PSC. So that function PSC will do. Then come to next, Estimates Committee. Friends, the year of establishment was post 1950 on the recommendation of John Mathai. And then members, it has 30 members, not 22 friends, 30, and all are from Lok Sabha. So why all the members of Estimates Committee are from Lok Sabha, we will discuss meanwhile. Then the elections of members. By Parliament, these members are elected every year with the proportional representation by means of single transferable vote. And moreover, a minister cannot become a member of Estimates Committee. And then terms of office, once again 1 year. Then chairman, speaker appoints him or her amongst the members. Once again, the chairman is also appointed, not elected, just like PSC. And invariably, chairman is from ruling party. We will discuss why. Then the function, to monitor the pre-budget allocation, and then to examine estimates included in the budget. So friends, estimates committee will work before the money is allocated, and the public account committee, it will work after the money is being spent, not just allocated, after money is being spent. So PSC is a post-mortem job and estimates committee is a pre-mortem job. So what happens? If the opposition leader becomes the president of estimates committee, he will oppose every single rupee that is being allocated. So that will greatly stall the government's implementation works. So that is why estimates committee is being headed by a ruling party person. And why all from Lok Sabha, friends? Friends, we know that the Lok Sabha only has the power to stop money allocation, and Rajya Sabha can only question the money allocation, it cannot stop. So that is why all the members are from Lok Sabha. So this pre-budget allocation, this one function makes a huge difference in the composition and chairmanship of estimates committee. Once again, we will not by heart, we will understand the logic. Then come to last part. Friends, some of you are being asking that will you clear UPSC prelims? Friends, we do not know that. Even we didn't know whether we could clear or not. But the thing is that, friends, if you give your preparation with utmost dedication, if you have utmost determination in your preparation, then you will achieve something or the other in your life. It might not be UPSC. So remember that. Friends, if you give whatever UPSC deserves, then you will get into UPSC civil service. But if you give something more than what UPSC deserves, so you will get something more than what UPSC offers, friends. I repeat, if you give more than what UPSC expects from you, you will get more than what UPSC offers. I will bet you my life regarding that. All the very best, friends. Good luck.